Amen. Well, it's really good to see you this morning. We have been in a series called The Relational Church, and today we're going to talk about the Affectionate Church. So if you're looking for a title, it's called The Affectionate Church. On your phones, you can follow with me. You can go to jcharbor.org, and the first button will be sermon notes, so you can go ahead and follow in the notes. I know we in Torrance have the big screen, but we have little screens here that have some glare. So if it's easier for you to follow on your phone, just go to jcharbor.org, and you should be able to find the notes right there. But we're talking about the affectionate church, because if we want to be a relational church, we're going to have to practice being an affectionate church. What's going to propel us to being a relational church is being an affectionate church and being affectionate towards one another. Now, I know when I say that title, there'll be somebody that says, I don't like this sermon already. I'm a tough guy. I don't show affection. I don't do this affectionate stuff. And somebody else would say, I'm not cheesy. All that affectionate stuff, that's cheesy. I'm too cool to be affectionate. Yet, did you know, number one, it takes courage to convey affection. It takes courage to be an affectionate person. So I know these tough guys say, I am too cool to be affectionate. Really, they're saying they're too chicken to be affectionate. And I find that it's interesting that these tough guys who have a problem showing affection have no problem showing anger. And yet, they're too pansy to convey affection. It takes courage to show affection because there's always that chance that we're going to feel dumb when affection is not reciprocated, right? Now, number two, it takes humility to show affection. One of the ways that we show affection is by expressing our appreciation for one another. But a proud person doesn't want you to think that you did them a favor, because they want to believe that they're self-sufficient. So they won't say thank you because their motto in life is, I don't need you. And a proud person is very self-protective, and they have all these protective layers around them. So they're not going to risk showing affection because they don't want to risk the humiliation of that affection not being returned back to them. But a humble person can express their appreciation and be affectionate that way by conveying appreciation, because we know we need one another. We know that no man, no woman is an island. And I believe a humble person is willing to risk sounding cheesy and willing to have awkward moments because they don't care if they look dumb in the event that the affection was not reciprocated. Here's number three. Number three, it takes wisdom to sow affection. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, it says, what you sow, that you will reap. So you will harvest what you plant. So a wise person knows how to receive more affection by planting more affection. A wise person will never demand affection. A wise person will simply sow it because they know the more they sow, the more they will reap. Here's a principle that I have discovered, that you don't always reap where you sowed, but you will reap what you sowed. So if you sow kindness, you sow goodness to others, they may not be the ones to reciprocate, but it will come back. Somewhere, from someone, somehow it will come back. So I decided that I'm going to continue to be good to all people, because even though they don't reciprocate it, what I sow, I will reap. I won't sow where I will reap, but I will sow what I will reap, what I sowed. So it may not come from those individuals, but it will come back. And we have to believe that principle. Now, when it comes to affection, what does that even mean? Here's a definition from Randy Carlson, who's an author. He says, affection is the kind of love that makes you feel safe, number one. Number two, close. And number three, cared for. And those are good things. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel close and cared for in our relationship. So if we are somebody who has a hard time expressing affection, and we're not very affectionate people, we leave the people around us feeling unsafe. They question where they are at with you, and they get very anxious in your presence. And yet I've noticed that when people were anxious in the presence of Jesus, he made effort to calm their fears. And he would say, fear not. Do not be afraid. Do not be anxious. Now, when we're not affectionate people, we leave people feeling unwanted. The people in our lives feel like they are a nuisance, and they feel like they need to give you space, or they feel like you're too big, you're too busy for them, so you're being pushed out of their lives. Yet Jesus had a way of welcoming people in, not pushing people out. He was not irritated by those children that wanted to come and hang out with him. In fact, he invited them to come close. He says in Mark chapter 10, verse 14, "Let the little children come to me and don't hinder them." You know, when we're not affectionate people, we leave people feeling unvalued. So they wonder if they mean anything to you, if they matter in your life. But I found that Jesus had a way of taking people who forgot their value, or they never knew their value, to come to understand their value. And it still blows my mind every time I think about how Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. Because remember, they're below him, yet he doesn't make them feel like they're below him. He makes them feel like they're royalty and that they're greater than him. And what a gesture of affection to wash somebody's dirty, smelly feet. And he never made his disciples feel worthless or insignificant, but he made them feel like they were greater than him. And that's unbelievable. He says in John chapter 13, verse 14, "If I then, your Lord and your teacher," Lord and teacher means that's above us. That means they're greater in rank, or greater in position, greater in authority. And he says, "If I, your Lord and your teacher, will wash your feet, you ought to do that for one another." He's saying, I am encouraging you now to show affection to one another as I have showed affection to you. There have been scientific studies done on the benefits of affectionate parenting. I read about a study done by Child Trends, and they said that people who grew up with warm, affectionate parents, they have a higher self-esteem, improved academic performance, better parent-child communication, fewer psychological and behavioral problems. And these are the long-term effects, the long-term results of warm, affectionate parenting. On the other hand, the studies show that children who have not had warm, affectionate parents, they have lower self-esteem, they are more alienated, they are more hostile, aggressive, and antisocial. And again, these are long-term effects. And so there are studies done, many studies now, that have made a correlation saying that the more affectionate the parents are to their kids, the kids will be happier and they'll be more successful. And here at JC Harbor, we want to be about raising up happy disciples. We want to be a happy church, not the depressing, overly religiously serious church. We want to be a happy church. We want to be known for our joy, and we want to raise up successful disciples. And again, that's going to happen when we are an affectionate church. So let's be an affectionate church that raises up happy, successful disciples. Some parents think that the way they're going to make their kids successful is motivate them with your anger. Yet that's not what the studies are showing. It's saying that we motivate them with our affections. Here are 3 common ways we show affections. Words. Can somebody say words? Words. Gestures. Can someone say gestures? And number 3, touch. Can somebody say touch? All right, let's talk about each one. Affectionate words. I think we all know by now that negative words can destroy a relationship. And therefore, positive ones can too. And I bet there's most of us here, I won't say all of us because maybe some of you are super holy, but I think most of us here, we've said things that we regret. We've said things that we wish we can take back, or if we can rewind time, we wouldn't have said it. But did you know that we can't delete those words? We can't delete them. They're still there. We can even say sorry, but those words remain. They've already been inscribed or etched upon the spirit of the recipient. But the best we can do now is to dilute those destructive words by continuing to speak and sow affectionate words into those relationships. Now, I believe that whenever we share, affection and we speak affectionately, we're putting a fresh log in the fire of the relationship. And so I know there's some of us that we may think, well, I let them know that they matter a year ago, or I expressed my affections to them 2 years ago. They should know by now. I told her I loved her 10 years ago. She should remember that. Right? However, we need to continue to put fresh wood in the fire. Because if we don't, that relationship will soon grow cold. And relationships are like soup. It's better hot. It's better warm than cold. Who likes cold soup? And you know what? We're the ones who determine the temperature of our relationships. We determine the temperature of our relationships. And we can cultivate warm relationships by continuing to add a fresh log, and continuing to express appreciation and show people affection. Now, I love how the Apostle Paul was so courageous in showing affection. To the church in Philippi, he wrote this, Philippians chapter 1, verse 8. God is my witness, how I long for you with the affection of Jesus. He's saying, this is true before God. I'm not making this up. God is my witness. I long for you. I miss you when I'm not with you. I really care about you. I love you. I love being with you. And you know why? Because it's the affection of Jesus Christ. And that's the source of our affections. We're not affectionate people because we went to acting school. We're affectionate people because the Spirit of Christ Jesus lives inside of us. And the God of love put his heart in us, and it's flowing out of us for other people. And we're not going to allow pride and fear to dam up that love. Now, Paul, he wrote to his disciple Timothy, who was the closest thing to a son, because Paul didn't have children from what we know. So Timothy was like a son to him. And this is what he said in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 4. I'm longing to see you, Timothy, even as I recall your tears, so that I may be filled with joy. So apparently, when they said goodbye to one another the last time, Timothy shed a lot of tears. They were very affectionate towards one another. And men, I believe that real men are affectionate. I heard about on Wednesday night at the discipleship where we have a lot of the young adults that gather. Some of the guys in the guys group were praying over each other, and the Spirit of God just fell on them in such a way where, man, they were praying for one another, and they were in tears. And man, real men show affection. I know, like some time ago, it was the tough guy that got all the girls. But my research is telling me that humanity is evolving. And now it's the softie that gets the girls. So anyway, I'm just sharing that with some of the young adults, anyhow, that are single still. But here, Paul says to Timothy that, man, you bring so much joy into my life that when I'm with you, my heart is full of joy. We did a series on joy not that long ago, but what's essential to being more joyful is being more relational. Relational people live longer. Relational people are happier. Relational people are more emotionally resilient and fight stress better. Now, here's the second way we show affection to one another is through gestures or through gestures or in gestures. Affection is not just in words, it can be in actions. I have a picture here that will be up on the screen of a card that my daughter, Eden, made for me. And there is a heart with a design in it, and she told me that is a basketball net or a basketball. She says, Dad, I know you like basketball, so I put a basketball design in the heart. And then she wrote in the card, I love you, Daddy. You're the best dad in the world. Love, Eben. But she meant Eden. Yeah, I get my D's and B's mixed up too. Anybody else? Yeah, we all do that, right? But anyway, I love Eden. And so that was the card. And she said, Daddy, can you put this in your office so that, whenever you're at work, you can remember that I love you? And that is affection from, she was 5 at the time she made this. Now she's 6. But that is a gesture of affection. And that is so cool. I love that card. I love you, Eden. You're the best daughter in the world. Okay, so I remember, when Meg was pregnant with Luke, and Luke is now taking a nap right there. But in this picture, you'll see he is actually in the belly. And it was during the heat of COVID-19 where we didn't know what this was. People were so paranoid. We thought if we go outside of our house, we're going to fall over and die. It was during that time. We were just live streaming church services, and everything was canceled at church. And we hadn't seen our church family for like 6, 7, 8 weeks. And it was on the heart of Sandra and Britt to do a baby shower for us. So, decided to do a drive-in or drive-through baby shower, and it was so cool. And we saw people from a distance. We waved at them while they were wearing their masks, and they came out. We just gave each other air hugs, and then they ran into their heart so they won't get COVID, or ran back into their car so they won't get COVID. But it was just so sweet, and I think we're going to remember that gesture for the rest of our lives. And I think even during this COVID-19, let's continue to think of creative ways that we can be affectionate as a church. Here's the third way that we show affection is through touch. So Paul instructed the church to display affection. When was the last time you heard this verse preached in church? 2 Corinthians 13, verse 12. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Greet one another with a holy kiss. I was just thinking, man, if I was like in middle school and I sat next to, a really cute girl, and the pastor was preaching on this verse, I would say, can we apply this right now? Can we apply this right now? Anyway, a holy kiss is a simple act, and it communicates, I acknowledge you, I see you. You're not invisible, I see you. And it also meant, I accept you. I accept you. You don't kiss what you think is gross. So it wasn't meant to be a sexual thing, which leads me to a great point, that affection doesn't have to be sexual. Some people think that they're identical. No, there can be overlap sometimes, and it's great in an appropriate context, but affection doesn't have to be sexual, because it's possible to be sexually attracted to somebody and think they're hot, think they're sexy, and yet not care about them at all, not have love for them at all. I remember, a while back, I was on staff at a church, and we had this guest, a drummer, and he was a buddy of mine, and we did this thing with like different churches that we all came together, and there was a church from Hawaii that came, and they brought a really attractive girl on their team, and he was our drummer, and he said, Daniel, I think I'm in love. I'm like, with who? He said her name. I'm like, you don't even know her. You just saw her. He's like, I know. I just saw her, and now I'm in love. Anyway, no, you're in lust. You're in lust, man. You're not in love. Anyway, it's possible to be sexually attracted to someone and not care about them. And it's also possible to care about somebody and not have it to be a sexual thing. And what I'm going to say now, I know it's not going to be super popular with everyone, yet I think we should think to ourselves if there's some validity in it. But for dating couples or couples that are dating, the whole relationship shouldn't be founded on sexual passion. Sexual passion is a very weak foundation. And the sooner it's introduced, it stunts the growth or the development of a friendship. Because the foundation of a relationship should be friendship, not sexual passion, because that's just so fickle, if you will. But it should be founded on friendship. And sometimes I believe many times when you bring in that sexual passion element so early on, the relationship just becomes about that, and the friendship doesn't grow and develop. And I know that there are people who will fight me on this point, saying, Pastor Daniel, don't you know that physical touch is my primary love language? So if I'm not getting touched, I don't feel loved if I'm not getting any, and I think my humble response there is, there are other love languages too. And if that's your strong one, then probably you don't have to keep developing that, since you're highly gifted in that area. So, maybe it's time to develop the other languages so you can be the total package. And if I want to be a total package basketball player, if I can't dribble, I'm going to be working on dribbling. If I can't shoot, I'm going to be working on my shot. So, for the person who just wants to express affection through physical ways or through sexual ways, I think we should just encourage them. Think of 99 other ways to express love and affection, and use the creativity that God has given you. I think what I'm trying to say is that we should learn to be affectionate people without having to sexualize everything. Anyway, what's the difference between love and affection? What's the difference between love and affection? Well, you can have love in your heart, but if you're not an affectionate person, we don't know that you love us. We don't know. We're doubting that you love us. And still, when we get in your presence, we feel unsafe. We feel we don't feel close. and we don't feel valued. So I know there's people that have love in their heart, and yet they're not very affectionate, where they don't show that love. So let me give you an example or an illustration. This is a person who has love in their heart, but they don't show it. So affection is love that can be expressed and then experienced. This can be experienced. Affection is the confirmation of love. So there are many kids who, even though their parents do love them, they don't know that their parents love them because they don't have confirmation. And so affection is the confirmation of love. I almost titled this sermon Edible Love, because affection is edible love. This is not edible. This is edible. I can mentally assent that there's probably fruit in there, but I'm not going to experience that fruit. And I know there's some of us, we can think, okay, I think there's love in Kevin's heart, or, I think there's love like deep, deep down in, somebody's heart. I think it's there. But when they're affectionate people, then we get to enjoy it. We get to experience it, and we get to be nourished by it. So, how do we become more affectionate people? This works better when I have the mic that goes as a headset. But this is how we become more affectionate people. We need to cut out some stuff. We need to cut out the pride. We need to cut out the insecurities and our fears. We need to get over a lot of our past hurts. Because I believe every time that we're hurt, we develop another protective layer. And we say, I don't want to be affectionate because last time it wasn't reciprocated and it hurt me so badly. And then we just continue to develop these protective layers. So if we want to go from being somebody who just, has the love of God deep, deep in our hearts to somebody who, when people get around us, they experience the love of God, we're going to have to cut out some stuff. We're going to have to throw out some stuff. We're going to have to get over some stuff. We're going to have to peel some stuff. We're going to have to let go of some stuff and get over some stuff and forgive. I had a cutting board in the first service. I'm trying not to damage it. I left it at church. And then we go from just being people with love deep in our hearts to being affectionate people. We don't want to just be a church that, the love of God is somewhere deep down in there. No, we want to be a church that gives the world an experience so they can taste and see the love of God through our community. Amen? All right. Anybody want some? Super good. Super sweet. Man, that'll give me the energy to go another 35 minutes. I'm just kidding. I'm wrapping up this message right now. But I hope that, as a church, we can become a relational church. And again, to be a relational church, we need to become an affectionate church. And affection is this edible love. Affection is not for cowards. Affection is for the humble. It's for the wise. Affection is putting fresh logs in the fire. And I know there may be some of us that we would say, wait a minute. The reason why it's hard for me to be affectionate is because I did not really grow up in an affectionate home. And I grew up in a more typical Asian home. And so, we didn't really grow up with these hugs and kisses and I love yous. And when I tell people that, they feel like really sorry for me. They say, oh, you must have psychological damage, But growing up, no, we didn't feel sorry for ourselves. We just thought everybody else was gross, like, oh, like their parents hug them and kiss them and say, I love you. Like that's just so cheesy. And so when I became part of a multi-ethnic church, people would just come and give me these big hugs. And then I was trying to hug back. And then I remember I heard this maybe a handful of times. Daniel, you are the most awkward hugger I've ever hugged in my entire life. And I'm thinking, I'm trying my best. And, this is weird. This is foreign to me. And I think over the years, I've gotten a little better thanks to the tutelage of Captain Ben right there. And, Grandmaster Russ, if you know Grandmaster Russ. But, that's why the church exists. That's why we want to be a relational church, because we want people who have maybe not grown up in such an affectionate environment to receive affection and to grow in the art of affection. And I really believe that that's discipleship. Discipleship is not just filling a person's head full of theology. Discipleship is showing somebody how to love, because we love them so well that they can love better because of that. And this is what Jesus says. He says that not by your theological discourses, not because you can write 800 pages of impressive, complicated theology, people will know you're my disciples. He'll say, because you love one another, that will prove to the world that you are my disciples. And so, man, that's what we should be doing as disciples. We should be discipling one another to love. And that's why J.C. Harbor exists. And I hope that, man, the world will see that we love one another. It won't just be a closed-up pineapple that's spiky when they come here. No, I hope that they can taste and see the love of God, because we are an affectionate community. I believe that the reason why we're not seeing revival, or there's a delay in revival, it's not because the world is not hungry and desperate and searching. They are. It's that the church does not know how to love one another. We so easily divide over differences. We so easily get bitter and get offended with one another, and we just burn bridges versus trying to repair or fight for a relationship. We just pack up our bags and leave so flippantly without ever even trying to bring restoration to relationships. And I believe that when the church can be an affectionate church, the world will come running here. I remember as soon as my daughter Eden was able to walk, every time Meg and I embraced one another, she can be in the other side of the house, or she can be in another room, but she just senses it almost, and then she comes running. That's what she used to do, like when she was little. When she just started, when you just start walking, you kind of are bow-legged. So she go, and then she would come and join the embrace. And I believe that, man, us as a church, if we're a relational church, if we're an affectionate church, this greater harbor area is going to come running here. They're going to come running to the place where they can experience the love of God through this community. When they see how we love one another well, and that'll be the greatest sermon in itself. And I believe that when we can be an affectionate church, when we can be a relational church, when we're a loving church where people can experience the love of God here, not just hear about it, talked about, but they can see it demonstrated and displayed, because we're willing to peel off some layers and step out and be courageous and to be humble enough to express our affection for one another. I believe that there'll never be a place big enough to house all the people. I believe that the church will continue to grow by leaps and bounds. I believe that we will see revival when the church can love one another. Jesus says, all the world will know that you're my disciples when you love one another. And I just want to wrap up this message by saying, man, this is not something that a few people can do. So I know sometimes there's an expectation, who are the leaders? They're the ones who should be relational. They're the ones who should be affectionate. They're the ones who should care for all hundreds of us. And yet, pastors have human limitations too. So I think the only way this thing works is that we all be relational with one another, that we all do our part to be a relational church. And let's create that here. Man, when people come, they'll experience the affections of Jesus Christ through his church. And they'll be drawn here, and we're going to continue to raise up disciples who know how to love well, who know the love of God. Amen? All right. Amen.